My first album was called Introducing Angel, and it was by, I met a friend, the late Fred Pittman, and he was a producer, and he was very good friends with John Abbey, who was the CEO, president of Ichiban Records. He had wrote a song called She Was Never Her, and I was introduced to him by a friend of mine named Barry, and I submitted my music to Fred Pittman. He was looking for a female artist to sing his song that he wrote, and he said if the song did well, I will do an album. So he got my package. He didn't open it until about a week later. When he finally opened my package and listened to my demo, he said he was in awe. He was wild over my voice, my music, and he immediately called me. He apologized for the late response, but he said, I really want to work with you, and he flew me into Vegas to cut the song She Was Never Her. And I met, and at the time I did, he had a friend named Karen Newman, who I eventually met Mary Wilson from the Supremes through her, because she was touring with Mary Wilson as Supremes at the time. And so she did background for the song, and then eventually I had to recut it again when we were shopping a deal. We were gonna. He started a label called Pitmobile Records. And then John Abbey said he would distribute the single. However, John Abbey heard the song. He said, I want an album on her. So he didn't wait for the song to go out and do what it's supposed to do and then do an album. He wanted an album on me right away when he heard my voice. So I already had a lot of songs that I had cut prior to meeting Fred Pittman. So we went into my catalog, and I put about 7 songs of mine that I felt that was fitful and good for this album. And then the rest of the songs, he introduced me to Preston Glass, his friend, who worked with, was in the camp of Nord and Michael Warden, and produced with, a lot of great records from the Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Aretha Franklin, and so on. And so he produced some songs on my first album. And I also met with Andre Simone, former with Prince of Revolution, and he produced another record of mine I cut in his studio. I worked with a lot of people through Fred Pittman, with a lot of great producers on this very first album. And so Ichiban released it back in 1998. And it did well, especially in Japan. I was really amazed that it broke big in Japan. And the single She Was Never Her was all over the radio. A lot of the BDS stations were picking it up. And then they folded. And from that point, we ended up using their studio to cut another album, and I called it Love Ride, and eventually shot that, and that's how Fantasy Records out of here in California, Berkeley, reactivated the label called Stax Boat Records, and we released that album on that label. To answer your second question, I started out doing R&B with Ichiban and Boat Records. Both my first album, Introducing Angel and Love Ride, were both R&B albums. And I've been doing a lot of writing, a lot of love songs. I was learned and taught by my mom, because God is love, and I don't write songs that are degrading or disrespectful, and I don't go by jurisdictions of what others think, what was laid on my heart. And as far as people call it secular music, but R&B, it depends on the lyrics and what are you saying, what is the substance. Are you degrading? You're talking about a lot about sex, and you're talking a lot about this or talking a lot about that that's going to disrespect. Or I try to make sure that my songs were cut down in that way. I wrote a lot of love songs of experience of what I went through in my personal life, or just sometimes songs that other people would share their experience with me. And so around after that, in 2003, I had decided and made up my mind. I just wanted to start doing urban gospel. I put the word urban gospel. It was just something at the time I made up because my style was still similarly the same. The way I write, the melody, the chorus, and with the lyrics are definitely changed. But the melody and depending on the music and the track or to who I'm taking the music from and write to, it still has a similarity of a sound of R&B, but And all you do, do all to the glory of God, his word says. So I just make sure that whatever I do, it's for all God's glory. And so I don't write anymore for myself R&B. I did it from the Introducing Angel and Love Ride, and then another album called I'm Who I Am, which I actually had recorded back in 2001 with my great friend, the late O.G. Pierce, who produced This Is How We Do It with Montel Jordan. We cut that album with other great producers that were on there. But I never actually released it. I put it on an MP3 at the time when it was something going on in 2003, and then it shut down and Universal Records bought it out. And eventually people started, whoever might have downloaded it at that time or maybe even bought it, started leaking my music on YouTube. And I had just all these fans I didn't even know from around the world doing websites about me or leaking the songs, but they would say they're not claiming copyright ownership and, and so on and so forth. And I said, this is time for me to release this. So I talked it over with my partners, Rodney Cruz and Demetrius, and I decided, Rodney said, this would be something, give your fans something, it's great music, if they're hits, records, people need to hear this. And so I took his word and I released I'm Who I Am, which did really well in 2017.
And just real quickly, because we're actually winding down on the show, that's what that little bell was and everything, but I want to get y'all's website, but before I get to the website, what is it like working with your daughter? Because I heard that the daughter is also on the label, and is she the only kid that is following in the footsteps of what you're doing? Because it sounds like y'all are just going to continue a legacy, because you followed in the footsteps of your mother, and it sounds like she is following in your footsteps.
Yeah, my mom wasn't a singer, but she was just my inspiration. But my daughter is just a blessing of God. He gave her a beautiful, phenomenal voice. She's very unique in her own style. And I remember when I first heard her voice singing, because she was a very shy girl at a very early age, 8 years old. And, we were walking one day. I was on a film set with Fred Williamson, and it was me and my cousin Tina. And she and we were talking. My daughter was just walking with us, walking behind. Our kids kind of like to follow behind. And she's singing to herself. And I stopped. I heard her do this beautiful riff. And I didn't even know my daughter could sing. And I turned around, I looked, I said, Shardella, did you just do that? I said, do that again. And she's like, no, Mommy. She was really shy. I'm like, no, Shardy, do that again. And she was laughing. And she couldn't do it again. And that's when I discovered her voice. And then when she was 11 years old, I wrote a song called Nothing Shall Separate Me, and I wanted her to do a duet, and she was like, cool. She was really happy. I gave my daughter voice lessons, and because I took it for 10 years, and she recorded the song with me. I released it on CD Baby. By this time, of course, I told you I started, doing gospel music since 2003, so I released it back in 2006, and she was 11 at that time, and her voice was just so phenomenal, and just the way she can do her voice. And I said, you know what? When you're ready, I want to do a girl group. And I said, and I want you to be the lead singer. And she was like, because she didn't want to be a solo at the time. So I started a girl group to bring her out of her shyness to sing. And the girl group was called One Unity with 4 girls, and I managed the girls. And they were blowing up big in the Bay Area. They did a lot of shows here in the Bay Area, in the Los Angeles area. They were on radio, they were on television, and also they even had a pending deal with Sony, who wanted to take a look at the girls and see about signing because their names were sparkling and people were hearing about my girl group. And unfortunately, the situation just didn't turn out, but I didn't want to fail my daughter. I didn't want to fail her. So I continued to work with her and then waited for her as she got older. And then her taking on listening to me a lot. Always, every time I brought home my song from the studio, she would be up late at night, and I'd be thinking she'd sleep, and I'd be playing my record, and then she'd be like crying, and I'm like, baby, what are you doing up? She's like, oh, Mommy, your song is so beautiful, and because she loved harmonies and things like that. And so it was phenomenal, and she became, into her own, writing her own songs. As she has written, we released an album on Atlas Elite Entertainment back in 2017 called The Evolution of Shardella. and now she's working on her new EP, and I'm excited for her. I'm excited for us as Atlas V Entertainment, and just looking forward for people to really know more about my daughter and more about, because it's not like this is her first time. She's done things in the girl group, but now as a solo artist, and now this is her first label with us. So I'm really, really excited about that. And also excited we're going to be working on Rodney Cruz's album as well, his first album, and we're going to do his first single, and he can tell you more about that. But, we're going to be producing some songs on him, so he'll be, of course, our next artist.
Cool. Well, one, I need to find out the label, how to get in touch with y'all, but you in particular, but also Atlas Entertainment. We've only got about 2 minutes to go, but I do want to hear more about Rodney, so I want to invite him to come back on maybe either next week or whenever y'all are available so that we can get more details about what's going on with Rodney and just continue the conversation, because I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to all of our guests today, and I know Dean has enjoyed listening and everything, so I know we're winding down, but I don't want to stop the conversation. I want to continue it, but, we're only given a 2-hour limit, so I do want to invite y'all to come back on in a very near future so we can continue this conversation, because I think it's a very needed conversation about the music industry and definitely about what y'all are doing at Atlas.
Yes, our corporate site is Atlas Elite Entertainment, all one word, atlaseliteentertainment.com. That's our corporate site. And at the very top, we have 2 links, one to our magazine that is free of charge. The people can click on the link at the top that says AEE Magazine. And it will take you to our recent edition of our magazine, which is pretty phenomenal. And we have a lot of artists and guests and people who are on it. And our magazine is very unique, where it's interactive. You hear people's voices, you read, you watch videos, and learn many things about the industry and those news.
All right. So, Rodney, definitely want to invite you to come back on. And, Dean, you got any parting words as we wind down? Because I hear that music in the background.
You know it. As we wind down, I thank all of our guests for joining us tonight. As I always say, when you walk out your front door, it's showtime and the world is your stage. Just make sure that people are not watching the rehearsal. It's another episode of Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. We have replays tomorrow afternoon between 2 and 4 on the Skyhawk Radio Network on Skyhawk Soul. And then you got the replays on Radio Public, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, Podbean, and Apple Podcasts. With that being said, it's the 6-man Dean Geronimo. Enjoy the rest of your Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. We go back to work tomorrow. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
That's right. Next week will be another amazing show. We will have some more. Just 1 second before we get out of here, I'll tell you who we've got coming on, and then we're looking forward to that show as well, because we know that we've always got amazing guests that are here on a regular basis. So definitely keep your radio, like Dean said, tuned in, and definitely support all the great artists that are out there. Definitely support Phil Wiggins, support the folks at Atlas Entertainment, support Leslie Joe as she's working on the things that she's doing with her podcast, as well as her comedy show that she's got on a regular basis also. So keep all of that in mind. And like I said, I did promise you that I would tell you next week's guest. And next week we've got the folks involved with a Milwaukee film studio that'll be joining us. That's right. They are doing some stuff in Milwaukee with a film studio at a redeveloped Pabst Brewing Complex. So No Studios is the name of the film hub. They will be our guests on, actually they're not until February. I was giving y'all all the wrong dates, all kinds of different ways, but they will be with us in February. But on the 28th, which is actually next week's show, we've got none other than an artist and activist that will be on the show, and we are looking forward to hearing from her. That is none other than Monet Noel Marshall. So she will be joining us along with Deidreana Freeman, who was supposed to have joined us before, but she will be joining us on this particular show to talk about political activism in Durham, and we will also be hearing from Monet about the theater community that she is doing here in this area.